there's this notion in Dynasty Fantasy Football that rushing quarterbacks cannot support multiple producing high-end, let me say, receiving assets, whether that be tight ends or wide receivers, whatever. Like, there's seriously... I don't understand it. I'm getting to a point where I'm doing a lot of research on it, trying to figure out if it's actually true, because it's kind of just an assumption now. If you have a rushing quarterback on your team, you're like, okay, I can't invest in any wide receiver outside of the alpha wide receiver there because they won't produce. They don't have a ceiling or anything.
Let me just cut straight to the chase. Oh, I can't invest in Josh Downs because Anthony Richardson is only going to support, he's not even going to support Michael Pittman, blah, blah, blah. That's the stupidest, laziest take I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And you, by the way, you did great on that. That was fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
You did awesome.
I know I didn't talk as fast as you do. It's like,
no, that's not a bad thing,
but
though. People like, I say I talk too fast.
Yeah.
But can you invest in Josh Downs in Dynasty?
Yes, you absolutely can. And that's kind of, we're Colts homers. I get it. But that was sort of the motivation behind this. I was like, okay, let me figure out if this is, am I wrong in recommending that people buy Josh Downs right now at his current price? And what I found is that
he's right.
I don't think I'm wrong. And let me just tell you, I went back 4 years because I didn't want to go too far back and record these high producing receiving assets for teams with rushing QBs, because offenses have changed dramatically just in the last half decade. So I just went back to 2020, the crazy COVID year, and I was like, okay, how many of those premium rushing quarterbacks helped tight ends and wide receivers specifically on their team produce as top 24 from a points per game perspective, producing assets relative to like wide receiver production. So like if you had a tight end that had X amount of points per game, I basically compared it to wide receiver production. So in 2020, we had the Seattle Seahawks under Russell Wilson with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett both producing as top 24 wide receivers. We had Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley, almost. Cole Beasley, like literally, I think he was like wide receiver 25 that year with, obviously, Josh Allen. In 2021, we had Kyler Murray with Hollywood Brown.
Can I say something real quick?
Or not Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson.
The 2020 Russ was not the Russ that was doing high knees in the middle of the plane. The 2020 Russ had 513 rushing yards that year.
He was respected, highly respected as one of the premium rushing assets in Dynasty Fantasy Football.
That was really his last year before he went to, kind of what we know now, 183, 277, 300 yards rushing.
Right.
So, but 500 yards. So he was a rushing quarterback. So.
Yeah. And then in 2021, Hollywood Brown and Mark Andrews actually on the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson, who Lamar Jackson is the rushing quarterbacks of all rushing quarterbacks. He could never support two high-producing receivers in the same offense. Well, he did in 2021. Zach Ertz and Christian Kirk on the same offense in Arizona with Kyler Murray did the same thing. And then guess what? DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett again in 2021. That was Russell Wilson's kind of down year. He was in and out with injury. Geno Smith came in and kind of filled his shoes. You had another good year for those guys. 2022, only one team, Philadelphia Eagles, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Shane Steichen. 2023, DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. This one was the most shocking thing that I found when I was gathering this data. I literally had to like double and triple check it. As much as we are downers on Justin Fields, and some can say haters, from a price perspective, we did not like him last year. We said he would not be able to help DJ Moore produce as a wide receiver one, would not get even close at all. To his credit, he did it for two guys. Top 24 producing wide receivers, Cole Kmet and DJ Moore. Yes, Cole Kmet's a tight end. He produced as a top 24 wide receiver if you're comparing the points per game. True. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, again, in a down year for Jalen Hurts where he had 15 rushing touchdowns.
I think it was something like that.
So here's the lesson learned. Over the last 4 years, we've had 8 teams with rushing quarterbacks help produce multiple top 24 producing receivers.
And I'm gonna defend you here right away because I mentioned before, I was like, yeah, Josh Allen's not really a rushing quarterback, and there's gonna be somebody in the comments that says that 100%.
Yeah,
but it doesn't really matter.
He literally barely made it.
It doesn't even matter.
Like, he can be the exception because he has a ton of rushing upside and he has a ton of passing volume. But actually, like Kyler Murray had almost as much passing volume the year he did it and a ton of rushing upside as well.
Yeah.
So what I found, I wanted to know how many passing attempts per game it took for all of these rushing QBs to help this production for their wide receivers. And what I found is 6 of the 8 occurrences were over 30 passing attempts per game. So for Hurts, it was 31 and 32. Russ, it was 35 and 29. Kyler, it was 34. Allen, 36. Lamar, 32. And Justin Fields at 28. So you really have a baseline of about 30 passing attempts per game. If you're like 28, 29, it's going to be really tough for you. It's going to be more of a rare occurrence. But what I think is really funny is that we have, at the moment, we've got about five or six premier rushing quarterbacks heading into 2024. That's Josh Allen, which you can throw him out if he's the outlier, sure. So there's 5.
But we'll count them. For the sake
Jalen Hurts,
2,
Lamar Jackson,
3,
Kyler Murray,
4,
Anthony Richardson,
5,
and Justin Fields.
6.
5 of those 6 that I mentioned have already achieved this.
You also have Jaden Daniels coming into the NFL, so
Jaden Daniels, you could count him as well if he gets good draft capital, a good landing spot, and he passed quite a bit at LSU.
I mean, unless he's on the Patriots, like he's probably going to be in this conversation at some point. Like,
yeah,
but I guess even if he's on the Patriots, but probably.
Yeah. And Anthony Richardson played 4 games. I forget. I think I did the numbers on him and just the super duper small sample size of when he played. I think he averaged around 30 passing attempts per game when he was playing, which is right around where we, expect him to. There's this notion right now though, where it's even for Justin Fields, who we don't even like as a passer, if he goes to a better situation with really good wide receivers like a Drake London and a Kyle Pitts, what are the chances that he can help multiple receiving assets produce at a top 24 wide receiver level on a points per game basis? Maybe more likely than we originally expected. If Justin Fields can accomplish this, Anthony Richardson, who has more arm talent, he progressed to his 3rd and 4th reads in the first 2 games of his career more than Fields ever has in his entire career.
And
that's a fact.
That's the truth. Watch the tape. That's absolutely the truth. People are going to argue with that and they just don't know.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yep. Lamar Jackson. Zay Flowers was shorted significantly. I couldn't even say it. Significantly going into 2023. Everyone hated his situation. They're like, it's terrible, it's terrible, it's terrible. We loved it. We were like, there's so much opportunity there, so much volume available, especially since Greg Roman is gone.
The Roman
Lo and
Empire
behold,
is over.
Zay Flowers increases in value because he was pretty productive as a rookie wide receiver, even with all of his drops. Kyler Murray, I'll never begin to understand the amount of hate that Kyler Murray gets as a rushing QB who consistently throws it over 30 times a game.
This has made you come around to Kyler a little bit, hasn't it?
What do you mean?
As a passer,
I talk about Kyler Murray all the time. No, I've always said that he has a lot of passing volume. That's objectively true. He has a lot of passing volume.
Yeah, he does. But
as a fantasy asset, I really like him.
I do too.
Yeah, I do too. Jalen Hurts, dude. If any of you who are honest, if any of you are honest with yourselves, Jalen Hurts in 2023 was not the Jalen Hurts of 2022. He looked like a deer caught in headlights a lot of times.
He looked worse.
I would literally count the amount of seconds that he had a clean pocket and literally couldn't find anyone.
8+ seconds.
8+ seconds because their O-line is so good.
Yeah.
And he still was able to manage this 2 years in a row in the second year without Shane Steichen. That's very impressive with 15+ rushing touchdowns. So to me, I think the point has been made, and I think you guys get it. So we're not done because we have a lot of teams to talk about here. We have a lot of assets to talk about and their respective prices. Since we've mentioned Anthony Richardson and Josh Downs already, let's just start there. And Josh Downs is going to be the guy that I really want to focus on here in his current price. He's a guy that I've been recommending as a buy for our members over at flockfantasy.com with their team blueprints. If they're a contender or a rebuilder, as long as they're not in an 8-team league where they're starting 8 players, I'm recommending him as a huge buy. And you're going to tell them about the site because they can get this recommendation from me and you if they go there.
Yeah, so you get a team blueprint, which is a personalized, custom, multi-year, comprehensive, thorough analysis of your Dynasty team. I used 6 adjectives there because that's how many adjectives it takes to describe the blueprint.
It's pretty awesome.
And you also get our 2024 Dynasty Main Rookie Draft Guide. The Combine's this week. We're going to be updating this for version 2 next week. It's rookie season. You get that. You get our listener leagues. Our first drawing for our listener leagues is Friday. We're going to do some in the subsequent Fridays after that to get in leagues with us, some really fun leagues, and some of them we're going to draft live on the channel. You get our Discord community. You get everything else from your other favorite creators at flockfantasy.com/domain. So like I said, use code domain when you sign up. Choose Mother Flock 2. You get all of that and more. But Josh Downs, when you're looking at what he was able to do in his first 4 games, and this is the first 4 games of his career, he had 21 targets. So you're talking, 5 targets a game for the most part, 50 yards a game. And I don't think he had any touchdowns the first couple of weeks, but still, you're talking, again, 50 yards per game, 5 targets, and then usually like 4 receptions of those 5 targets. But you're talking 9 to 10 points per game in both his and Anthony Richardson's first games of their career, 9 to 10 points per game. So that's like flexible, first of all. Mm-hmm. And second of all, that is assuming that they wouldn't have gotten better as the season went on, which they would have, as Josh Downs did get better. And yes, Josh Downs last year did kind of hit a cliff.
With an injury, too.
But he was injured, and also, obviously that team with Gardner Minshew team started.
They were hanging on, man.
They were hanging on. But that's also assuming that Anthony Richardson's not going to come back and be a better passer next year. And I guarantee you the development of Anthony Richardson is in full swing. Mm-hmm. In Indianapolis. So Josh Downs is one where people will just straight up avoid him. But Josh Downs is, again, somebody who people avoided because he got 3rd-round draft capital, because he was going X in the rookie drafts, and we were screaming the whole time, do not fade him, do not fade him. Yeah. And lo and behold, Josh Downs, from a value standpoint in Dynasty, has really gone up. Josh Downs is a good one. Michael Pittman, I can guarantee you Michael Pittman's value from now until the beginning of the season is going to go down a fair amount. I can guarantee you. For 2 reasons. Number 1, Michael Pittman really at a value peak right now. Number 2, Anthony Richardson's coming back, and people are going to use that as an excuse because they're going to look at splits with and without Anthony Richardson. This is a Kyle play. Kyle's like, oh, Michael Pittman, blah, 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 blah. And he said that last year, and he was wrong about it. Yeah, that's right, Kyle. I called you out on it. But at the same time, you're assuming that Anthony Richardson's not going to come back and be better this year. Like Shane Steichen's not going to scheme Michael Pittman's going to get worse at route running. How does Michael Pittman get so many targets, Nathan?
Because he's a ridiculously good route runner.
Because he's always open.
Yeah.
Because he's always open, right? And also because the Colts offense...
And high probability throws. High probability completion. It's a skill set.
Everybody thought this going into last year. It's not like Anthony Richardson's going to step in and he's going to be slinging it deep. We saw 30 pass attempts per game. A lot of them were intermediate range passes. He would occasionally take some deep shots. He had some pretty deep balls. Yeah. But it's all manageable, and it's all within what his skill set is currently at this stage in his development. That will not change next year. You're talking about one of the best head coaches in the NFL at tailoring their system around a quarterback, and when you have that with Anthony Richardson, it's going to affect his weapons as well. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs are still going to be productive.
Yeah, you're talking about a head coach that just did it with a less athletic and less arm talent quarterback in Jalen Hurts the year before. And here's a funny thing too is this year it's Josh Downs. Last year it was, and we were guilty of this, DJ Moore can't produce with a rushing quarterback. We are guilty. He did it. The year before it was Devontae Smith isn't going to be able to do it with A.J. Brown.
Guilty.
We were not guilty. We said bye Devontae Smith.
Oh, we did say that.
We did say bye.
Oh, that was my guy.
And last year was also Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers can't produce with Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson is rushing upside. Guess what? He did. It could go on and on, guys. It could go on and on. But what I want to do now is I want to look at the flip side here because people are going to say, well, yeah, that's true. Stats don't lie, obviously. But what's the upside really? Isn't the upside just so much higher for those non-rushing QBs? And I would say theoretically, yes. But it's hard to really evaluate it when you're looking at the amount of non-rushing QBs in the NFL, non-premium rushing QBs in the NFL, not just non-mobile, but even the mobile ones that just don't run as much, like your Mahomes, like your Justin Herberts and whatnot. There are so many of those compared to the rushing QBs in the NFL that there's kind of it's all over the place. It's not balanced. True. But really, let's look at the year before when we had a bunch of top 24 producing receivers. Guess what? They were all top 24 producing receivers. There were only a couple of teams that had multiple producing wide receiver ones. That was Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill.
And the Eagles.
And the Eagles with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. One of those was rushing QB. The other one was not.
Was that wasn't the same year that it was DK and Tyler Lockett too, wasn't it?
Were they both wide receiver ones?
Yep. Yes.
No, DK was wide receiver 2.
Oh, yeah. Tyler
Lockett was the low-end
one.
wide receiver 1.
Yeah, that's right. He was the wide receiver 9.
Yeah,
yes,
but
my bad.
Yeah. So this year,
Still.
now, and so then you're thinking about, okay, well, what are some other teams that have, really the firepower to do this? Probably the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta, and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yes.
So there's that. Yeah. So there's one team that's like really, really elite. And then San Fran, which is like basically everyone in that offense. But guess what? None of them are consistent.
Did you see they were interviewing Brandon Staley?
Yeah, I know. I think it's pretty funny.
That's freaking hilarious.
Wait, the Lion, or no, San Fran.
San Fran was, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they were officially interviewing him or if there was just buzz around like they should hire Brandon Staley. It would make more sense for them to hire internally, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Staley
Absolutely.
Staley as a defensive coordinator, I'm sure is better than he is as a head coach. They wouldn't make the hire if he wasn't. But anyways, that's besides the point.
Sure about that?
No, I'm not sure about that. Just food for thought. Food for thought.
I like food.
So are there any other teams that you can think of that have like exclusively pocket passers that, have multiple high producing wide receiver ones, essentially?
I mean, C.J. Stroud and the Texans, I think both of those guys
have that upside.
showed that they're capable of producing at wide receiver one's levels. Like, I mean, Tank Dell and Nico Collins, both from a points per game perspective.
But what's the question there? Can they do it consistently? Because sure, they can both be wide receiver ones in any given week, but can they be for an entire season? We don't know yet.
And we don't know yet. But I think they could. I think they have that upside. I think they're in that conversation for sure. I mean, purely based on the nature of the passing volume of C.J. Stroud and also what he was able to do his rookie year.
But then you also see teams like the Cincinnati Bengals where they just continue to disappoint every single year. Because of
you always expect T. Higgins and Jamar Chase.
The Kansas City Chiefs every single year continue to disappoint since Tyreek Hill left. It just there's so many guys on this side and so many on that side. It's kind of just 50-50 give and take. And I think this video is less about what are exclusively passing quarterbacks able to support for their receiving threats in that offense, as opposed to this is really about the rushing QBs in the NFL. And we really have 5 or 6 of them right now. Potentially 7 with Jaden Daniels. And I think the assumption that they can't do this like any other quarterback in the NFL, it's gone too far. Because we're like by default just shorting every single receiver in that offense.
So what's the do?
The do is invest in those wide receivers, the 1s and the 2s, and the tight ends if there are talent. With the exception of Cole Kmet. I'm kidding. Cole Kmet, his price is whatever. But I think that's the do for you because what we've seen over the last 3 years, like I already said, there is pretty much at least one rushing QB over the last 3 to 4 years where we've said fade the receiving assets in that offense and they end up producing at very high levels and they go up in value. This year, our prediction for the guy that's going to increase in value the most is going to be Josh Downs.
Guy took the majority of his snaps out of the slot last year.
Right.
Guy that has a really high ceiling, that was a really good prospect that fell in the draft, but ultimately ended up in a pretty good situation. So, all right, do us a favor. Make sure you like this video. Like down there. Just do it. It's really quick. It helps us a lot. And also, if you haven't subscribed and you play Dynasty, we play Dynasty. Imagine that. We love Dynasty, and we'd love to see you over on flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain, choose a amount of flock tier. You get one of these team blueprints, comprehensive plan for your Dynasty team. We'll break down your Dynasty team in depth and give you trade targets, give you moves to make, give you future things to be doing with your Dynasty teams. And you also get our rookie draft guide. You get our listener leagues. You get our Discord community. You get our databases, all of it. flockfantasy.com/domain. Like I said, use code domain. Appreciate you guys. Peace out.